afternoon, everyone. I, on behalf of EPCH, welcome you all to today's design workshop on home decor for spring-summer 2024. This is one in a series of such workshops that we are conducting across various clusters in the country, both on design and on packaging. So we did one Decor on design, and this is second, and then moving on to other clusters. As far as packaging is concerned, we have initiated in Agra and Firozabad, and then we move to other clusters. So to begin with, we have with us, I'll introduce the gentleman on the dais. We have with us Mr. Ravi K. Pasi. He is former chairman EPCH. Mr. Prince Malik, member of the Committee of Administration of EPCH. Mr. R. K. Verma, Executive Director EPCH. Ms. Vandana Bhandari, she's our design head, design consultant, ex-team in IFT. And last but not least, the DBS team led by the founders, Mr. Bhuvnesh Shuri and Ms. Divya Suri. So I welcome you all to this discussion. And this is a workshop. This is not a seminar kind of a thing, it's a workshop. And you'll be given a task once the presentation over to create your own trends and designs. So the objective is to make it very, very interactive. So you are free to interact with the experts and let's see how we go along. So I would hand it over to Ms. Vandana Bhandari to take it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Abbott. Welcome to everybody. So wonderful to see so many people coming in the middle of a Friday afternoon. But I'm sure the journey is going to be well worth it, and the time that you spend will be very useful in the coming months for you as you start to develop your collections. We have a wonderful presentation and a wonderful team which has been working for many days to put this together. And as Mr. Rawat mentioned, this is just one of the initial workshops that we have started with. This is just in the second of our series of trend and design workshops. And for this, we have the team from DBS. We've got Divya Suri and Bhavnesh Suri. They're a young group, but doing some wonderful work. And I'm sure all of you are going to really enjoy. I'm not going to stay talking too long, but I'm sure you're really going to enjoy this. What we want you to do is to interact, to ask questions, to give suggestions, because the ultimate aim is how can we take this forward for the benefit of all of you sitting in this hall. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Bhandari. I'd like to start off by welcoming everyone, and I really hope that you derive a lot of value from what we planned for you today. Our team will obviously interact with some of the tables. We've structured the workshop in a manner that it should be interactive, and please feel free to ask questions. At the same time, I'd like to thank Dr. Bhandari to make this happen. Thank you, Mr. Verma, Mr. Rawat, Mr. Pasi, and over here, Mr. Malik. And without wasting too much time, I think we're going to start this presentation, and we have multiple people working and interacting with you. And Sapan will take you through the first part of it, and we would absolutely, and I would also quickly like to introduce you our team so that you understand who's who. So Sapan is our Chief Design Officer. He's been in leading roles with companies like Amazon. Sharad is our Chief Strategy Officer. He was ex-director of Raymond in leading roles with BF. Vikram is our Global Sourcing Officer, and he's been heading multiple roles with companies like Walmart. And then we have Sabina, who's been a design leader, working with companies like Decor and Georgia Carlton. And then we have Namrata over here, who's our AVP for Home, Art and Software. So we will have different people working with you on different things. So without wasting too much time, we just want to give you a little introduction to the film of what our company is about. We'll start with that and we'll jump into the presentation after that. So Sapan, maybe you can just start with that, please. And we have
it's an honor to be here and to get this opportunity, and we hope we worked really hard on this, and everyone here has worked really hard on this, and we hope to interact with the meeting at the end of this afternoon. Thank you.
And thank you so much for taking out the time to be a part of this trend presentation and workshop. Before we get started with the presentation, I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to sort of take you through how we planned this session for you today over the next 2 hours or so. So while we will be looking at the key trends for the season SS24, what we'd like to focus on and spend maximum time doing is actually working with you in trying to understand how do we look at decoding trends, right, and use them effectively in order to create the right products, the right designs for your business. And the way we're going to be doing this is, it's a very simple 5-part template that we'll be using, which will be a part of your template, which we'll share with you in a bit on each of the tables. And we'll work together, we'll move around the tables, we'll work with you, and we'll try and put this, all the 5 different parts of this template together to eventually arrive at a design board. And this design board will essentially help us capture all the key trends, the important trend inputs in one place, and it's going to work like a ready reckoner, right? A basis on which you basically start your design process. And this template or this process is essentially what we've been using for a long time, and it works well for us. I'm sure you have your own internal processes and systems to do this, and which is fine. The idea is not really to sort of prescribe a specific way of building these design boards to use and to implement trends. It's more to sort of talk about a concept or some sort of a structure, right, that can be put together in order to identify and then use trends effectively. So let's get started. Before, again, getting into the presentation, the first bit we'd like to talk about is how we as a design organization, a team of designers, we
Could you please hold the mic closer to your mouth?
Sorry. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. All right, sorry. So like I was saying, we'd like to start by discussing how we as a design organization, as a design team, we work towards analyzing trends, right? So at the beginning of every new season, there are quite a few different sources that we look at. One being a network of agents that we have across our offices globally. We get a lot of soft intelligence, a lot of input from them in terms of what's happening in their market with different brands and products. Similarly, working with clients is again a big source of input, where we look at their design ideas and see that what's really sort of happening in different parts of the world in terms of how the trend direction is shaping up. Apart from that, we also, of course, visit various fairs. Of trend information or info that we look at are, the fairs that we visit, retail stores, etc. And like for many of you, one of the key inputs are from the trend reports that we subscribe to from leading global trend forecasting agencies in the world. Right? However, what we've noticed is that when we are looking at these trend reports, it can get a little overwhelming. Right? There's a lot of information out there. So while we look at all these trend reports and information, what we do is we take a step back, right? And as a team, as individuals, we try to sort of look at, from a practical sense, what are these big, ideas, big concepts that are around us and which we can pretty much see on a regular basis how it's affecting our lives, our lifestyle choices, our behavior as consumers. And picking up those very tangible, real ideas and then trying to sort of map them back to what trend reports say, and eventually arriving at ideas which are at the intersection of these things, right? I think really sort of helps us to narrow down and really pick up the key ideas or the biggest ideas that we then sort of work on and then deep dive and start our design process. So essentially this is what we're talking about in this slide, where you observe what's happening around you, around us, right? We identify the big ideas and influences, connect the dots, and then look at how these trends are influencing us, how they are sort of evolving with time, and at the end of the day, like I said, affecting us as consumers at the end of the day. So basis that approach, basis that methodology, right? Here are what we believe are the three biggest trend concepts for 2024. So the first one, trend concepts that we believe are most important for 2024, right? The first one is called responsible living. And this particular concept, I'm sure you would have guessed by now, is about sustainability, right? Now, sustainability is one of the biggest influences today, right? It's a buzzword, you cannot miss it. And it's been around for a while, but earlier I think it was not looked at so seriously, but today you can see brands, organizations, companies using sustainability as a core value and building their businesses and eventually, the end product which goes to the consumer around this concept. Therefore, and this is across industries, right? This is not just home we are talking about. You look at fashion, you look at hospitality, you look at FMCG, you look at even the auto sector, right? This current big push with EVs. It's talking to this particular trend, right? It's across industries, and this is something which definitely is becoming mainstream now, and it's here to stay not just in 2024 but beyond. The second big trend concept that we'll be talking about today is about the influence of technology. Now again, this is undeniably something which is influencing, affecting us on a day-to-day basis, right? Starting from something as simple as a UPI transaction that you could do on a daily basis or online shopping, going to very large, and complex concepts like the metaverse, right? Which is like a parallel digital universe where you have your own avatar, or concepts like blockchain and cryptocurrency. So essentially, this is something which is changing our lives on a daily basis, and as influence, I think this is something again which is here to stay and continue beyond 2024 as well. Then finally coming to the third trend concept, which is heritage revival. Now here essentially this concept is not as conspicuous, or it's not as evident as the other two which we see very regularly, but important nonetheless. And what we are talking about is the fact that today in the modern world, right, with mass manufacturing, mass consumerism, the products and the design aesthetics are going towards becoming very universal in appeal and very generic, right? However, there is an innate need for the customer to basically also look at products which have some sort of, a background, a history, some heritage, right? Some unique identity, some unique character. And that's where this comes in. And for these kind of identity-related elements, right? What are we looking at? We're looking at our past, right? We're borrowing from our past. We're looking at our traditions, cultures, art forms, craft, and essentially taking cues from there, taking ideas from there, and incorporating them with products in a very contemporary context. So these are the big three we believe are the most important for 2024.
Sapan, I also just quickly say one thing. So just want to add a couple of things. These are the big three trends, obviously we'll deep dive into that quick. I think design and what we do with design is also very important to understand that eventually it has to sell to a customer. And that's why our team, and we didn't have our company intro, you'll understand this if we would have shown you that. But it's about design, brands, manufacturing, sourcing, because the design teams and the manufacturing teams, eventually the audience here is mostly manufacturers, and some of you may have your own brands. At the end of the day, what is being designed also has to be targeted towards a certain customer and a certain price point and a certain look and an aesthetic. Because you'll see a trend which might be at a Walmart level going all the way up to a Ralph Lauren level, but how do you get the right product? How do you work with that? So internally, we guys also work very closely with our sourcing team, our product development team, our brand team. So I think that collaborative approach towards design, not just from a design team, but also from multifunctional, departments within an organization, help in getting it right first time. Because tomorrow, if we've designed something and the cost of that is not meeting into the parameters of what we have to sell to our customers and not knowing our target market, what's the point of that? And it's not questioning the design team's creative abilities, but it's the fact of the matter is commerce makes everything revolve. So if we are going to make the designs, we must keep in mind that eventually what is our target customer. I have been a designer, I have an ex-background of being from Parsons, but when we are sitting with design teams and young people coming in, they're creating these gorgeous designs and phenomenal talent. But at the end of the day, when you're going to sit down and say, who is your target market and what's the cost? It will not work, but that does not take away from the creativity. So being creative is a prerequisite in our industry. But understanding commerce, if those are blended together, I think brings a very solid and a valuable result for the organization, and that's exactly where everybody collaborates. So Saban, I think I just wanted to add that because we missed our intro, so I just want
The 3 big trends a little more in detail. This slide, we're talking essentially about how do we work towards decoding a trend or breaking it down into sort of smaller bites. Right? We've taken 5 attributes. You could choose lesser or more. We felt that 5 essentially captures all the different aspects of a trend, and then when they all come together cohesively is when you have the right trend and design output. So the first is theme, we've already spoken about this, so this is self-explanatory. The second is look, which is essentially nothing but the visual output or the visual form of what products in a particular category look when you are looking at a particular trend. Right? Let's say, for example, the first trend, responsible living. Now, the idea is to basically understand visually, first of all, what do different products across categories come together and look like. Then moving on to the third attribute, which is color, like you all know, it's extremely important. It completely alters the look and the aesthetic of a particular product. And the usage of color across various tonalities, harmonies, combinations, etc. leads to creation of the eventual product, which then sort of works beautifully along with the trend or along with the requirement of your customer or your brand. Then moving on to the fourth attribute, which is material and finish. This, of course, is the building block of the product that you're creating. And this is not something, especially materials, is not an attribute which changes vastly season on season. So what we'll be focusing on is not really the laundry list of materials that can come under a particular trend, but what we'll focus on are the key materials or the key finishes rather, which are important and a must do for this particular trend, for this particular season, right? And then finally, print and pattern, very similar to color, adds a very distinctive identity, visual identity to a product, and are extremely important to be considered as an attribute for decoding trends. So with that, let's move on to the first trend concept, responsible living. And here what we've done is we've put a theme board for you across multiple product categories in home. And the idea was essentially to give an overview, a snapshot across product categories, because whenever we're looking at trends, right, it's important to look at trends holistically, right? Many of these categories might not be a part of your business. However, we do believe that it's important to look at all these adjacent categories, because at the end of the day, if you are a brand or a buyer from a brand, right, when you are working with a particular supplier or creating a particular set of designs, you are, as a buyer, keeping in mind how does it work? How does it sit with the rest of the categories that are also a part of my brand offering? Similarly, from an end consumer's point of view, right, the particular product is not being considered in isolation, right? You're thinking about your entire space, your home, and then looking at evaluating that product in terms of its, design and functional, attributes to say that, okay, how does this sit in my space and how does it all come together cohesively? So we just wanted to give you an overall view across multiple product categories for that reason. What I'd like to sort of now draw your attention to is the bunch of words that we have right on top of the theme board. Now, this again is something that we do as a design practice, where when we start working on a new trend, we try and coin all the keywords, right, linked to that particular trend. Now, what keywords essentially are is that they very, briefly sort of in one word or a couple of words, they capture the entire essence or the core of a particular trend concept. And then they act like guidelines to help you while you are creating your products, when you're designing your products. So the way we use it is like a checklist, and all the products that we are designing, we are creating, we keep on going back to this checklist of keywords to essentially see, are they, ticking all the boxes, right? Because once you do that mapping and see that it's sort of, talking back, it's connecting back to these keywords, you get some sort of a validation in the design process that you are doing justice to, or you're using the trends in a relevant manner, right? So let's look at the keywords for this particular trend concept. Sustainable, which of course is self-explanatory. Mindful. Now mindful from a point of view of sourcing, from the point of view of manufacturing, right? Without, with the right amount of consumption, take what's required and not more from that concept. And also mindful in terms of, in terms of the overall consumption as an end consumer, right? Then natural, of course, the entire trend revolves around being one with nature. Natural in terms of the usage of the raw materials which are used in creating the products, as well as in terms of the overall output or the look of the product. Then comforting and calming in terms of the visual aesthetic of the product, right? If you look at the products on this page, you'll get a sense that, the usage of colors, the usage of shapes and forms gives an overall visual aesthetic and also a physical aesthetic of being comforting and calming. Organic, this is specifically more towards textile, or usage of organic materials. And finally, minimalistic, which basically talks about designing in this particular trend is more simplistic, right? It's not complicated, it's not over the top, it's simplistic. So that essentially, with this visual cue and with the usage of these keywords, help us sort of capture the big ideas of this particular trend, and then of course we move on to each and every category more in detail. Now, second attribute, which is look. And we've done this across multiple product categories. This one's for Decor, right? And essentially, we try and keep the entire process of trend identification very visual, right? Because being from the industry, understanding the sort of the nuances involved. When you look at this board, for example, right? A couple of things immediately jump out, right? You see that there is a lot of play of natural materials. You see that, the color palette is very earthy, soothing, calming, it's not jarring, right? You look at the shapes, whether it's the arch on that mirror there, or the silhouette or the shape of the vases, it's very, it's curvilinear, it's got soft curves, it's got a sense of calm and comfort, right? So these are the kind of elements, or these are the kind of trend cues that you keep on looking at and then using them as you move forward with creating your designs.
Thanks, Saban. Moving forward, when we go to bed and bath, look, you can see yourself also, again, the usage of natural materials, the shapes are very calming, being bed, being, your prints and textile. It's a very soft and calming texture and print and the details that are there, even in your bath, ceramic, you can see. It's all giving a very natural look and feel. Your bowls, your wood, the shape of the wood, it's very, natural, curvilinear. Even the bath shape, it's very roundish and natural. The usage of the stone, it's very subtle. And that's pretty much it for this slide. Namrita, to you.
Thanks, Sabina. Okay, so we come to furniture and lighting. of course, your furniture, the first thing comes, it needs to be comfortable. Of course, binding back to your theme, but it needs to be really comfortable. It's also, it's combines back to our theme, which is natural. So, thinking of a material that we're going to use. The simplicity, where, the shapes are very simple, it's clean. Using the raw material, which is natural material. I mean, all the shapes, like if you see that chair, it's a very clean, simple shape that kind of goes well and finds it back to your original theme. Same we've done with our kitchen and dining. You look for a very earthy feel, a natural look, hand painted, it's the organic shape, just binds back everything together. So it talks about the story that we are trying to build it together.
So just building up to what Sapan said, we always go back to the keywords with every presentation. So we are mindful of those keywords when we are making a trend. And the same thing, textile is very important to tie the story back together. In terms of fabrics, we're talking about, in this story, we're talking about fabrics that give a more natural feel. So either we go to linens, where we have the natural and the beauty of the fabric comes. If we are talking about a customer with sharper price points, then we are looking at blends that would give the look of linen, but is not pure linen. So that's how we kind of dissect the stories, dissect the designs. And if you look at the mood board here in terms of textiles, so we've given a very natural look here. Again, the colors are very soothing. The embroideries that you would pick would be very organic, not defined structures and shapes. So the same thing kind of goes across hard goods, it goes across furniture. All the furniture pieces you saw had the curvature, no straight lines, natural materials used. All the materials had a matte finish. So we keep the same thing consistent. A lot of woven stuff, a lot of hand woven. Pieces are added to the mood board, and as well as if we are adding print, we're keeping it very subtle. So you won't see jarring colors, you won't see, very strong colors, but it kind of resonates back to the entire story and body.
Let's just quickly look at the color palette for this particular trend concept. Now, while there is a very wide range of colors, color families like you can see on the slide here, however, there is a very specific, sort of tonality in colors, right? That's the link, that's the common thread. It sort of brings the entire palette together. There are a fair amount of mid-tones, some darks, and then of course pastels as well. But overall, it sort of comes together to give you a very naturally inspired sort of look, which is extremely important to sort of, give the right aesthetic or the right character to a product that is designed in this particular concept. Moving on to the fourth attribute, which is material and finish. Like I said, we'll look at some of the key, trend ideas here. First being ductility. So in ceramics, it's no longer about very glazed, polished, high shine sort of textures. It's more earthy, it's more raw, it's got a very sort of almost rough, finding, say for example, stone, etc. in its natural form. That's what it's been, that's the idea, right? That's what we're trying to mimic, that's what we're trying to create in terms of the finish in ceramics. In wood, it's a lot about detailing, right? Of course, wood, like we saw, is a very important material for this particular concept. But what is important is to look at a lot of detailing that comes in, whether it's in terms of texturing, whether it's in terms of inlays, whether it's in terms of pastellations and combining different kinds of woods, colors, textures, grains, etc. Or using very, very organic shapes, like for this chair on the left-hand side, which is essentially a piece of driftwood which has been sort of purposed and shaped and designed in a way that it sort of becomes a very interesting looking chair, and of course the look overall is almost like it's one with nature. Then on textiles, like we just spoke about briefly, a lot of play of texture. Just visually, when you look at these images, these reference images, you get a sense that they have a very prominent texture. That's really important. apart from that, what is also sort of becoming a lot more talked about, used, and I think is getting there in terms of becoming mainstream are a lot of textiles which have the quality of nourishing, of well-being, right? Here we're talking about fabrics like hemp, fabrics like bamboo, which are looked at more as novelty, but I think these are going to become more and more main stage as we move along. And then finally moving on to the fifth attribute, which is print and pattern.
So again, whether we're talking about soft goods or hard goods, print and pattern plays an important role because you can only redefine a product certain ways. We all get inspired from product, but how to differentiate it? So certain ways are materials, but also print and pattern play an important role. Whether it goes on a cushion, whether it goes on a tabletop, the prints can be used. And exactly, if you look at the board here, whatever is picked as a print and pattern direction, everything is very natural. It's very organic. It's not, gives the impression that it's not thought of. It's just naturally that has been painted by the artist. There are no clean angles, fluid shapes, even the textures on the woven stuff, there are no fixed lines. It kind of organically merges from one color to the other. So that's how we're resonating back to it.
Which is crafted in perfection. Now here you do see a play of certain defined patterns, some amount of geometry in terms of the print and pattern play coming in. But at the end of the day, they're not again very clearly defined, not created digitally or through mechanical processes. It's all hand done, and hence it has this sense of being imperfect. And that is essentially the beauty of the design, right? So of course a lot of the print and pattern that comes out of hand-done crafts is very important for this particular trend story. And then finally looking at florals, botanicals, again it's not very clearly defined, it's not very sharp, it's a lot like impressions of organic sort of forms in flowers and foliage. Even if you look at the motifs, they look very hand-drawn, very naive. And overall it's got a very fluid, free-flowing sort of a direction when it comes to even florals and botanicals for this particular story. Right, so these were the 5 attributes that we earlier spoke about, and this is how we've broken down this particular trend concept. Now, moving on to the workshop, right? Enough of talking, let's get some things started in terms of doing this exercise more hands-on. So here, essentially, this is our design process, right? We're showing this as an example for you to sort of take you through this entire process and then conduct a workshop. So for any design that is being created, right, the first thing is there have to be some reference point, there has to be a certain starting point, right? So of course you start from what your customer brand or your target brand is and the category that you're looking at. So for the purpose of this example that we're going to share with you, we've taken Zara Home as the target brand and we've looked at dinnerware and specifically serving dishes or serving bowls as the product category.
Now, I'm just going to step in here also. And just to highlight a couple of things, obviously we set up this workshop. We are focusing on one category, one brand, just in the interest of time. And obviously it's not possible to cover all the different areas from textile to all of that. So we are looking at what we are doing over here in this particular category and what these handouts are for you. And once I've explained, we just like to create a few mood boards and then get a few up here and then we can discuss it together. Go ahead,
Right. So once you have your customer brand and the product category aligned, then what's really important to understand what the brand is all about, right? So we do a bit of the brand analysis, look at their websites, visit their stores if they are available locally, and we essentially look at what are the different important brand attributes again, right? What is their aesthetic? What are the kind of cost price points that they operate at? What are the kind of materials that they use, their design language, etc., etc. And eventually, with all that information, you start creating what we are going to do now as an exercise is the design board using the 5-part template like I mentioned earlier. So just to give you an idea, right? So this is the reason it's pretty self-explanatory that the reason why we've chosen Zara Home for this particular trend story is because how they are currently, it completely sort of, reflects that particular trend very strongly, right? And this is again across product categories. While we'll be doing this exercise for dinnerware, specifically serving bowls as a category, if you look at across the multiple product categories, the language, the design aesthetic, the overall look and feel is very cohesive and it comes together as one brand and one sort of voice. Then further, double clicking into your category that we're talking about. Now these are essentially the products that they have online. This is for the US market. And these are the products that they are currently live in their catalog. So these essentially start as a reference point for us to say that, okay, this is what Zara Home is doing right now. This is their product language. These are the kind of materials, shapes, etc. And of course, the price points that they're operating at. And looking at these as the references, right? Now, how do we start creating a set of designs which would appeal to this particular client and eventually to the end consumer? So this is the 5-part template that we were talking about. Essentially, it's no rocket science, it's a very simple template. There are 5 parts to it. The first being brand product references, where we just looked at the product references from Zara. We use that as a starting point, put that there in order to capture that, okay, what is the eventual output in terms of the design and the trend influence that we want to take into account while designing. The second is the look. We spoke about that. That was our second attribute, where we look at this particular category and then pull out some references. So just to let you know, all the information that we'll be using right now, or all the input that we'll be using right now to create these design boards, is all from the various slides that we saw earlier, right? So we'll pull out some of the ideas of the look that we want for this category, and we'll just put it here. Then, of course, the color. And I'll show you those slides as we move forward, because we've done an entire exercise to show you the process. You make a selection of the kind of colors that you believe will work for this particular category, for this particular brand, from the mother color palette that we saw earlier. Then bring in fourth, print and pattern ideas, and finally the material and finish ideas, right? So on the templates, the boards which are printed out as a part of the trend kit, I think each table can work as one team, interact and exchange ideas and start building this. We will move around and we'll sort of interact with you, and if you have any queries, very happy to answer that. But essentially it's a quick exercise where we look at all the A4 sheets are printed with the previous slides. We can just cut them, paste them, put them together just to create sort of an example board, right, or design board, and sort of understand the process. So just to sort of guide everybody through the process, we'll start.
touch base with me again and I'll explain what is these tags. Table 2, my partners were Sang and Shivani. We made the mood board together. We wanted to be a little different because we thought the survey which was shown was all browns and beiges. So we've changed our theme a bit. The brand reference that we have shown is mostly survey and we particularly picked up blues and indigos, and that's why we have taken our dyes, which is a blue tie and dye, a blue indigo block print, and another indigo thing. The color palette that we have taken is the base, the strong colors would be indigos. We have taken a relief color as beige, and we have taken accent colors as yellow and orange. Just wanted to add that I have a design background on me, and in fact, Professor Vandamandari was one of my teachers when I was in NIFT. The print and patterns that we have taken is fluid, flowy, no geometrics, no florals, absolutely natural and organic shapes. And the texture that we have taken is for the surface, non-glossy, matte, organic, natural. And why this fabric picture is there? Because it has these self-herringbones and for the textures. So the texture is going to be self-texture. So that's it.
Yeah, we gave one more.
We are going to do 3 more.
Yeah, we're going to do 3 more.
Good evening everyone, I'm Prince Malik. Like my company specializes in table decor, and anything you put on table, like especially table mat, coasters, napkins, or something like runner. So I have chosen a theme is for the table, Zara brand. Now I am looking for sustainable and natural kind of product, and if you see the brand is Zara, and the look wise is a natural look. If you see these all patterns, is a round shape, which is more natural, more common, as Tapal sir told that we go for something very natural you find everywhere. Then for the color theme, we are looking for earth colors, natural like little brown, maybe whitish, something which represent, I mean, similar to the jute or the sustainable products we do. Natural. Yeah. Then we have a printed pattern. The jutes can be weaved in a different patterns. You can have a simple weaving, you can crisscross, or there's different ways to have a pattern on the jute. So that is one thing. Then we come to the material and finish. Again, we are looking for a natural finish, all natural material. So this is it, a small presentation. We did it in 15 minutes. We are out. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Everyone, I'm Rima Mehra, and my company basically deals in the glassware. So today's concept is about the tableware. We deal in one of hotels and flower vases. So the look we have kept is very natural based, and we want very straight and simple designs of more utility. And the look is all about being very organic. And the colors we have chosen are from beige to copper tones, and then the second concept is between mauve and greens. So the motifs we have taken is again very natural based. So, and the final product what you look here can have some motifs from the natural looking things like leaves and all. So that's the basic thing. I've got it together with my co-partner Anil here. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think one of the key things, sorry sir, earlier art was very much for the walls and outside of day-to-day wear. But during COVID what has happened is everybody's become a little bit of an artist. People who had never woven or stitched or knitted or painted, everyone has started to do that. And as they're doing that, they're also starting to want artistic feelings on their tableware. So we've started seeing in the next 2-3 seasons, I think we're going to see a lot of art in our home decor. And that's a very important trend. So we saw the tie and dye, we saw the little flower, we are seeing the artist palette on boards, and you see a lot of that. So if you're studying trends, look at these key again and again, and how we start incorporating them in our daily decor. Thank you.
My name is Ali.
So none of us have a design background. I'm from marketing. He has a different business, and we all come from different lines. But this is something we have been able to put together. So I come from a fashion background, but I primarily do marketing. So none of the design, but I'm here to learn from each one of you. Okay, so this is what we have put together. We have gone. We've not gone with Zara. We've gone with something different. So here are our kitchen and dining colors, which is green, a little bit of pop color of orange, and then the earthy colors that we discussed. And what we see as a trend is a print in kitchen and dining wear, which is not very common, and a different texture on the bowls is what we have seen, with a color combination, so orange with white and green with white. This is our color palette. So the color palette is something which we have noticed in the current trend of the brand, plus in the the forthcoming trend. So that is how we have picked it. We have neutrals which totally describe sustainability. We have a pop of orange and green to give them a little like an extra look, like a oomph factor to the product. Then we have prints which do not have a defined structure, like it was very well explained by the team. So something like a raw flower, raw leaves, and then comes the material and finish, which comprises of like different colors of the wood, which was very well explained that that's the new trend. It's not just about a single wood color. And the ceramic, which we see as an upcoming trend because of the sustainability, how all of us are becoming more eco-friendly about everything that we do in life. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we'll stop here now.
So this is our color palette. We have used basically what?
Okay, we are designing a living room. He's my, basically, I just met him. What's your name? Hayat. And my name is Naharika. So, we both don't have designing background. So we have used some kind of colors like ombre colors or the basically Scandinavian kind of feel, and we are looking for the living room, and we are doing vertical lines here. And basically we are trying to break the monotony of the room with the vertical lines and focusing on that. And basically that's what it is that we are trying to do. Alright, thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Segment. However, because so many of you have presented your boards, I just wanted to very quickly run you through how we put ours. Right? So this was our way of doing it. So we've got the brand, we've got the look from the trend report. We've selected a set of colors, brought in the printing pattern that we thought would go well for this particular brand in this category, and then eventually looked at materials, which is basically your dry touch ceramic wood. And very quickly, I'm just going to take you through the next steps that we follow, right? So the next step that starts is with initial ideation and a lot of hand sketching, where we put down all the ideas that we sort of come up with. And once that is done, we start turning those hand-drawn sketches, those ideas into 2D technical drawings, where we get a little specific in terms of the measurement, the material, the shape, form, etc. And then start transforming them into 3D forms. Now this process works well for us because it's time efficient, it's cost efficient, and also at the same time it gives you a lot of room to experiment, unlike actually physically sampling. And here are the variations that we created, right? So this was our basic design, and then we started applying the print, etc., to sort of give it more sort of, shape and form. This is another option, and so on and so forth. So this is just a bunch of exploration. Similarly, we tried another concept and with the same theme in mind, did the black and white sketches, moved on to the 2D technical specs, and then finally to 3D, and started doing our explorations. And eventually we sort of came to these two set of products which we felt was, appropriate for the brand and for the from a trend relevance point of view. So this is just to very quickly sort of show you the next steps after we create the design board. Now moving on to the next theme, tech influences. We spoke about this quite a bit in the beginning. I'm just going to go to the theme board. Now here again it's multi-category, and let's just start quickly with the same process that we followed for the first one, which is looking at the keywords, right? Digital, of course, that's self-explanatory. A sense of fantasy, because of course it's inspired by everything that is virtual and, you know, not really a real thing, but exists in a virtual space. And the overall look and feel of the products across categories, if you see, is very bold in terms of the usage of colors, and it's immersive. It's, in fact, if you look at this theme board and compare it to the previous one, it's almost like the exact opposite, right? Because there we were talking a lot about nature, being close with, you know, all natural elements and, you know, trend ideas, and here we are talking about something which is extremely the other end of the spectrum, which is very digital, which is very technology-led, which is very sort of, you know, high contrast and bold. Then illuminated, because of course you can see there's a lot of play of colors and light, the shapes are fluid, and overall if you look at the design language, it's very experimental, right? It's like a set of things that one wouldn't have seen very usually earlier. It's very experimental in that sense, and overall the look is futuristic, because we are talking about technology and how it's affecting us and how it's influencing us and it's taking us to the next century. Moving on to the second attribute, so it's the exact same breakdown, the exact same process that we are following. Again, we looked at the theme, now we're looking at the looks across different categories. This is for decor, where we have a bunch of different decor items, and immediately you can see that the color is a very, very strong element. There's a play of these very bold, synthetic, man-made colors. It does not have any resemblance to the earlier one, where we had a lot of these natural colors and a natural sort of a look. There's a strong play of colors. The materials, again, you can see a lot of, you know, materials like plexiglass, resin, etc., which is coming in and which is giving it a very different sort of a look and feel. If you look at the shapes, very fluidic, they almost look like, you know, out of a sci-fi movie. They're very sort of conceptual and abstract. The next category, bed and bath. Again, bold use of designs. It's no longer about texture. It's no longer about being very sort of, you know, subtle. It's bold. Look at the print and the patterns. There's a lot of movement. These sort of wave-like designs. Even in terms of materials like glass, right? Tinting, gradient, ombres. These become very important, because again it gives a very modern, almost futuristic sort of a sense to the material. Plexiglass or acrylic is a very important material here. If you look at metals, it's no longer your regular gold silver sort of finish. It's more like multicolor, iridescent sort of finishes on metal. The next category, furniture and lighting. Again, all these products put together immediately gives you a sense of a multiple play of colors, a lot of gradients, a lot of ombres, even regular materials like wood, the way it's been used in terms of coloration and shape gives it a very different, experimental, futuristic look. Kitchen and dining, again, across materials. If you look at glass, you look at ceramic, you look at metal, there is definitely an element of being very futuristic in terms of being very technology and digital inspired. And the same goes for textiles, right? So the point is that these elements, these trend ideas, you can see them, they are recurring, they are, it's the same set of, influences, but of course, translated, interpreted differently from one category to the other, one material to the other. But overall, there is a very strong connection between across product categories. What are these few attributes, elements, trend ideas, whatever you want to call them, sort of coming together and creating the overall look. Now coming to color. The color palette again is very broad. There are a lot of, very strong, high contrast, very high saturated colors which are coming in along with some darks and some lights, but overall the color again, unlike the previous palette, here now you can see a lot of synthetic color, a lot of sort of, plasticky colors coming in. Moving on to the fourth attribute, material and finish. Glass is extremely important, but in the form of a lot of tinting, a lot of gradients, and even in terms of the shapes are very experimental, a lot of organic, sort of fluid shapes coming in. Then acrylic plexiglass, I think, is an extremely important material for this because it allows two things. One is in terms of how malleable and how easily moldable, etc. it is to create these very complicated or very, sort of futuristic looking shapes. And secondly, also in terms of the saturation of colors and the kind of multi-color, iridescent sort of reflections that can be brought about in this particular material. Finally, moving to metal. Now, this is a very different application of metal. It's not like, how you would usually imagine it to be. There is a lot of organic form, even here. It's almost shapeless. It's almost like it's looking like it's, it's melting, right, the way it's been used. That is one, in terms of the shapes. And secondly, in terms of the kind of metallic finishes, it's not just your typical metallic finishes. A lot of colored sort of finish, mid-range sort of finishes are coming in on metal. So that was on materials. And finally, to print and pattern. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of these, sort of geometric, almost optical illusion sort of prints are important for this. A lot of waves and ripples. This kind of almost 3D sort of a form given with print and pattern is important for this trend. Multicolored tints, gradients, and this is across the board. You see it in textiles, you see it, hard goods, soft goods, furniture, glass, across the board. And then finally we come to how do we then work towards, this is exactly what we did earlier for the first trend story, trend design and implementation. So for the sake of this particular trend, we've taken example as Neiman Marcus, which, as you know, is a very high-end specialty store. Now this is very different from Zara Home, where we saw, which is more like very sort of a mass market, or at best a premium mass sort of a brand. Here we are talking about a completely different target customer who's very high-end and has a curation of designers and boutiques. And the category that we've selected is vases. Now here's what the catalog of Neiman Marcus looks like, right? You look at all of these products and immediately you connect back to this whole idea that we just spoke about, which is very sort of, almost futuristic, alien, sci-fi-like, and that's the kind of products that you see on the Neiman Marcus catalog, and this is directly linked to this whole influence on trend with technology. This is the same template, and here's how we are again, filling up this template and creating our design board. So first comes in your brand product references, then we bring in the look references from the trend section. We do a selection of colors which we feel will work very well for this particular trend and for this category. We bring in the print and pattern influences, and finally the materials. And with that, again, we start with our design process, a lot of sketching, putting down of ideas, quick renderings, moving on to two-dimensional technical drawings, putting down measurements, material, other specifications like I mentioned, and then gets into 3D. And here are the different explorations, the variations that we have created as an example for you. Change of color. Then we looked at another kind of a silhouette pattern, and then again created this same sort of, done the same exploration and created design options. We were looking at different color and finish options, and finally this is a set of, this is the sort of product set that we came up with, and this is the final products. Now this is just, again, like I said, an example to say that how do we sort of post our design board, get into the design process, and eventually come and arrive at some designs that we want to eventually create.
So before you move into the third one, I think we did skip through, but the hand sketching part is extremely important. I think we guys always think that the final product is what we see, but I think the thought comes at the hand sketching stage, and I think that is something which needs to be explored a lot more with the ideas of materials and finishes, so that when you're actually going into the digitization part, it's a lot more accurate, and you're also going into it with some kind of a plan rather than saying, let me start designing straight away on the computer. Sometimes it doesn't work out, and I think to get a sense of what your collection's looking like, because we're just showing you one here, but if you really want to have a larger collection and you're a manufacturer for glass and you want to focus on vases, I think that's one here. But you could have 50 over there and then finally decide that what are the 50 which is going into digitization, and out of those 25, what is really going into sampling. I think that will help in reducing the cost towards sampling rather than making it and then the management seeing it and then saying, okay, we don't like this, let's make changes. We've seen this happen. So I think the discipline to set in at each stage and check mark that discipline is really, really important. So I just wanted to add that in so that we don't miss the black and white sketch part and treat it like a sketch track. So that's it.
Take you through this, we'll do again a quick exercise with the design boarding. So this is the the overall theme board, again across multiple product categories. And here's what we were talking about earlier, right? All these elements which are classical elements borrowed from the past, borrowed from past art forms, craft, tradition, culture, all these elements coming in and then getting sort of infused, incorporated in products, but in a very contemporary manner so that it's made for a modern home, it's made for a modern brand. So here are the keywords, right? Revival, which is essentially bringing back the past into the design language, a lot of heritage that is borrowed, the craftsmanship becomes very important here because that is essentially what adds that special value to the product. Then we have a sense of storytelling. Now this is what I was talking about, right? The identity of a product is essentially about the fact that it has some sort of a backstory, it has some sort of a sense of origin and where has it started from and what is the contemporary or the current version of it. Then ornamentation, of course, because with these inclusions, with these interesting sort of design elements added is when the entire design comes alive. And overall, the look here is very contemporary, but it's also very luxurious, right? It's not meant for a very clean, minimal sort of a home. It's meant to have some sort of a sense of luxury, and that's the overall look. Now moving on to each of the individual product categories. This is what the decor page looks like. You can clearly see that there are a lot of elements brought in from, inspired by art movements, from different craft. The finishes on the product gives you a sense of being, it's antique or it has a history to it. It's not something which is shiny, brand new. And all these elements put together across different product categories is what essentially is, sort of bringing that entire heritage revival, look alive. Similarly, if you look at bed and bath, on the textile, you can see a lot of these classical patterns, like for example, the one here is paisley, which sort of makes a comeback. You look at the usage of materials like metal, but with some sort of sort of etching, texturing, or with the creation of a very sort of oxidized antique sort of a feel. The color palette is such. If you look at those products on the right hand side, where they're very simple, but just the right tonality of color, the fact that it looks like a rich jewel tone, and that coming together sort of gives it that entire more contemporary luxe feel. Let's look at furniture and lighting, and I think this chandelier on the left is a great example of how you take something from the past and use that as a starting point, but you really create something which is contemporary. So this is a chandelier, it's inspired from a classical chandelier, but it's made for a very modern home in the way it's been sort of translated and designed. Similarly, you'll see a lot of the furniture pieces here. They have the usage of these plush fabrics, velvets, boucles, etc., which immediately give a sense of luxe. They also have a sense of history that they carry forward. And overall, the shapes do look like they are inspired by very sort of classical designs and silhouettes and shapes. Kitchen and dining, again, a lot of play of gold, giving it that sense of being a little old world, having that old world charm, and also making it, of course, very flux. But at the same time, you can see there are elements which are brought in which gives it a more contemporary context. In textiles, a lot of these art forms like Baroque, for example, the West is a very big influence in terms of the print and pattern direction. There are a lot of references to that art movement. There is also a usage of very sort of special novelty fabrics like jacquard and damasks. Even when it's plain and simple, there's a lot of play of textures, right? By methods like quilting, pushing, etc., which brings about that sense of luxury, that sense of, like I said, old world charm into the products. Moving on to colors, I think the most important thing to look at for the color palette, this particular trend story, I think is the usage of very rich, almost jewel-like tones. Using that in combination with the mid-tones and the light tones is, I think, what would be most important and distinguish this color palette from the rest. Material and finishes, we spoke about metal and the oxidized effect. I think this is extremely important for SS24. A lot of usage of stones, marble, onyx, agate to bring in this whole sort of rich luxury feel with a lot of patterns and textures coming into stone as a material. Glass, I think there's a lot of, I think glass overall for SS24 is a very important material. We saw in the previous trend story that it's a lot about radiance, tinting, etc. For this particular trend story, it's about creating a lot of texture in glass, right? With ribbing, with some sort of a hammered texture, and then addition of some elements. Like for example, if you see the bar slide at the end with that gilded top, with that detailing there, right? Makes it almost like it was from a bygone era. In textiles, like I said, it's a lot about textures and surfaces. It is very plush and luxurious overall, and even where the fabric is pretty straightforward and simple, there's a lot of these quilting, ruching, these kind of techniques used to bring about a sense of luxury, bring about a sense of being special and novelty. And finally, moving to print and pattern. Like I said, the whole Baroque movement in art, these kind of patterns, which are, these are not very new. You've seen this, they're coming in and out a lot, but they become very important, I think, for SS24, keeping this, trend story in mind. Again, can have multiple, sort of translations. Could be print, could be a jacquard, could also come in the form of etching or molding, like you can see in the other products there, cutlery and the accessory, the light cover there. The other important pattern is geos, but geos are very simple. They're used more like, they're very tonal, tone-on-tone sort of geos, or they're used, like I said, in the form of quilting, etc., which brings about the whole richness in the surface. And with that, we've sort of taken it through all the 5 attributes for the last trend concept, and now we can again start the same exercise. Let's do the workshop for the last third trend story.
And I think this one will be much quicker, right? I think we've done the first one, so let's try to do this quickly.
I think it should be longer. Now there's more fun.
No, let's see what it comes out as.
So just to sort of give you a point of reference, we have looked at Anthropology Home as the reference brand here, and we've looked at furniture, specifically drink and side table as the category. And again, if you look at this, right, this is, I think their catalog right now is a perfect example of how you combine the old and the new effectively. If you look at the catalog, there are a lot of modern pieces, but also at the same time, there's a fireplace and there's a certain elements which are coming in the products. There is a very clear sense of borrowed ideas, designs from history, but across, from the past, but put together in a very sort of contemporary fashion. Same with this, right? If you look at the couch, you look at the fireplace, and then you look at the other elements which are here, which in terms of the lamp or in terms of the other, furniture pieces, they've all come together beautifully. Look at the shelf of all those, decor products. There is a very interesting blend of what's borrowed from the past, what's modern, and then it's an absolutely beautiful fusion. And looking at their category, which we've sort of focused on for this particular exercise, these are what the pieces look like. Again, very reminiscent of the past, but with a very contemporary
expanded across the years. In November 2022, we entered into a strategic partnership with ES Limited. And with this partnership, we're poised to take the next leap in our journey.
We start our textile design process by creating original hand-painted artwork. We transfer the copyright of these original designs to our clients, and then we archive them both physically as well as digitally for safety. In 2019, we acquired Giacomo Barzagli, one of the most reputed studios based out of Como, Italy, that was established in 1978. Our textile designs are showcased on our online B2B shop that offer a wide range of prints, embroideries, weaves, and jacquards.
We are one of the largest textile design libraries in the world, with about 20,000 plus textile designs.
Our in-house weave studio is equipped with looms, latest CAD and CAM softwares, and an industry palette to create original structures for both fashion and home textiles.
After we've created the textiles, our team is super talented to create thousands of styles for men's, women's, kids, across various categories, across various brands, and we work backward from the customer's option plan needs. We use state-of-the-art machine learning, artificial intelligence, and forecasting tools with a high level of accuracy from the point of view of predicting business intelligence.
Similarly, our home studio uses the best-in-class infrastructure and resources to create products and designs for our clients, both domestically and internationally.
In-house facility for product development, which is housed with the best-in-class infrastructure for fit development, technical design. We have stitching, embroidery, hand embroidery, computer embroidery, all housed for our creative teams to get the best output, to make the product as innovative and fresh for our customers. Apart from physical sampling, we use state-of-the-art softwares for 3D rendering, especially of artworks. We've been the pioneers of design as a service, all encompassing these various services into one and servicing our customers across the globe since 2010. Panorama Brands are venture which creates global private brands for various customer-specific needs. We've already launched 3 brands. I'm very happy to share that we're going to be launching Gia, which is a premium home lifestyle brand, which is going to be rolled out in about 150 plus touch points in the GCC region. Our sourcing vertical is supported by our design and product development to provide end-to-end solutions for our customers for fashion and home across the globe, from manufacturing all the way to warehouse deliveries. This is supported by a network of offices based out of Delhi, Bangalore, Dhaka, New York, as well as a design center in Como, Italy. And this integration of various offices across the globe makes it a seamless experience for our customers, and we become a partner of choice for them. We are an industry-first, end-to-end full-service company for the fashion and home industry, with a team of specialists for each of the business verticals and a global industry network. We are here to help our customers to take their business to the next level. We design for the world. We serve everywhere.
About the past. So it will always talk about some module from the past. So it would say the 60s are in fashion, or the 80s are in fashion, or as in the presentation it was mentioned, the Baroque style was in fashion. So it's a very circular thing. Things keep coming back. So don't look at only that word and say, oh, the 60s are in fashion, and these are the 2 examples given. If 60s are in fashion, then we can go right back to the 60s inspirations and study those, and then actually get 100 to 200 more ideas. So every word in the forecast actually goes back and gives us a lot of meaning which we can add when we are doing our work.
I am presenting my company, Decor here. And thanks to EPCH that who gave us this platform that first generation entrepreneur like me can have this experience of design. Other than this position, we have been working in every position, be it peon or director. So every position I have the experience of, but designing is something that I am learning today. Thank you. So we have chosen lamp and basically tabletop decor. So lamp and washroom decor and vases. So the material, first I go to material. So, we have chosen marble, glass and metal as our major materials. And coming to color then, we have chosen rich colors because if it's royal and heritage, it has to be very prominent. So we have taken golden and then green malachite. I think this is the pronunciation. And then black and then white. So because we have marble so white and then this color for the lampshades fabric thing and black for the vase and golden and the print and pattern we have taken Christina because it has more of a carving thing that gives you a royal look. For the lampshades fabric, we thought of having some golden stitching, the embroidery kind of thing here, and on the black vase we have thought of similar print with the golden paint or similar material whatever it is. So this is what we have created as a team from Prismatic Decor. Thank you.
As a team, we have decided furniture as a brand product already. Second, our look will be very minimal and contemporary.
Can you keep the mic a little closer?
Sure. The colors will go on neutrals and new tones. The patterns and prints will go on new symmetry and the quilting pattern and the material. The material will be very tactile with fabrics, velvet and rigid stones.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Who is next? One more.
Actually, I don't have any background in designing and this is my first time and I am also not into home decor, but I came for this and I wanted to present. I don't know how good or how bad, but still. So I'm going for minimal with opulence. So I've taken materials like gold metal with glass and white. So basically I have like the bed will be with a plain sheet with a textured kind of runner with and plain this side table and a little bit to give a contrast, a little bit of painting with some metal and black edges. So just to cut out on the straight lines, I've given something, some textured metal lamp. So this is what the material. I've also used some quilting material. So this is what I have.
Wonderful. Thank you. And we need to tell these stories, and that really helps to put our product in a better place. So this exercise is not just to come up in the front and talk, but also to give you the experience to be able to talk in front of buyers. That's very important.
That was the reason I went up, because I don't have any experience, but I wanted to, like,
no, that's very, very wonderful that you came up and spoke.
I'm from a company called MJ Exports Private Limited. We are into metals and especially with the brass and the copper and aluminium, these sort of things. So it makes sense to us, so that's what we had created. The idea is to have a color combination of a gold and a white. So the theme, the brand product reference that we have taken is a ritual, and we are thinking of items having of lamps, the decor items, the tables, and the vases, of having a touch of brass and the white combination. And so is the printed material, which is of brass and white. The brass, the gold and the white color combination. So that's our theme. We have tried it. We like it. That is
design comes from conviction.
That's
when
more
you are
important.
confident, when you are presenting it to your buyers also, you will do it in a very
We should love our product. What we have designed, if we are loving it, I think that's the first criteria. That's the most important criteria.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Creating, some will hit and some will miss. But you have to keep creating it. So there's no good and bad.
Good evening everyone, I am Yashwant Kumar Yadav and she is Silpi. We are from Goel Exports. I am a design manager over there and this is my board. I just named my board as a cozy curve just because we selected a brand Anthropology. Anthropology is all about the accent furniture which match their material and present to the buyers or present to their comfortable people who can mainly attach their product. In this board, we generalize the accent material over here, the brand Anthropology which represent here, with a different kind of forms, and we generally categorize our product in lighting. We selected the lighting product with a different kind of materials like stone and linen fabric. We use over here the glass and the accent brass. We use rustic copper also. Here is the warmth color you can see, which majorly represent the mood of a product. Means lighting always represent a mood of a product. Like if you are sitting in a warm light, your mood will depict the areas or what you are generally looking for, your mood and aesthetics. If you go for the color palette, this is generally for the outer aesthetics, not for the lighting. This is only for the outer aesthetic. This prints and pattern is generally for ripples, which we have used in different kind of materials, either in metal or glass or anything. The material we generally use in this category is glass, because glass is kind of thing which can reflect or diffuse the light according to our mood. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much. That was a very, very interesting and innovative session that we had. And I think we all are designers now. This was such an interactive session that we had. Even I feel like a designer myself. So before we call it a day, I would request either Mr. Malik or Mr. Barba, who are with us in the class, to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you so much. The team was wonderful. Actually, we've been in this trade for so many years, but we are not sure how to start designing a product. So that is what I was discussing with him, that once we try to create anything, a piece of furniture or a textile piece or maybe a glass piece, but we do not know how to start. So at least now we have taught us how to start, how to make a trend and what kind of things to look at, and it's a wonderful experience. But I would like to advise everyone, any new exporter who is getting into this home decor or handicrafts or any kind of creative product, to visit the fair, look for the trend, because visiting the show physically in India or overseas gives you very good experience. Before venturing into design, you must understand which are the big companies and which are the big buyers. You see their catalog as they shown us, the Demon Markers and Zara Home and all those brands which are very good. So this gives you very good insight because they are the market leaders. They take you like जैसे हम कहते हैं ना कि लॉस एंजलिस में जहाँ से फैशन चालू होता है, पेरिस में जहाँ से फैशन चालू होता है, तो या हांगकांग में हम जाते हैं. So I mean these places, or these companies teaches you what will be the future trend. So I think visiting the fair and then selecting the product lines and then searching for the material. क्योंकि इंडिया में हम देख रहे हैं last so many years कि material का exhaust हो गए. Because अभी going to the furniture we find कि जोधपुर जयपुर में वैसा ही traditional furniture नजर आता है. We have like 400 booths, but they look almost the same. And again we go for the textile Manipur या हम जितने भी carpets वाले को देखते हैं वो सारे के सारे I mean it gives a homogeneous look आजकल. Because over exposure हो गया products and every time the buyer comes after 2 months what's new हम इतने failed हो गए हैं कि shelf life of product है बहुत कम रह गई है. I mean आज आप create करते हैं तो आपको लगता है कि next time में मैंने roll over कैसे करना है. अक्टूबर में हमारा handicraft fair है, then Feb में next fair आ जाता है, April में हांगकांग आ जाता है. तो I mean it's like ongoing process. तो इसके लिए मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि आजकल अगर किसी ने survive करना है उसको सोते जागते माइंड में डिजाइन चाहिए तभी वो सर्वाइव कर सकता है. जैसे हम कहते हैं कोई लीगल केस है तो अगर आप उस केस के बारे में दिन रात सोचते रहते हैं तो तब जाके वो जीत पाते हैं. आप लॉयर के ऊपर नहीं छोड़ सकते. तो तो सेम वे अगर आपने सक्सेसफुल होना है इस बिजनेस में, सारी क्रिएटिविटी की गेम है। बिकॉज वर्ल्ड में मैकेनिकली चाइना बहुत आगे है और अमेरिका बहुत आगे, जर्मनी बहुत आगे, बट इंडिया में हैंड क्राफ्टेड के लिए आते हैं। तो जब आप हैंड क्राफ्टेड सामान के लिए आते हैं तो उसमें आपको ये चाहिए कि जो क्रिएटिविटी वाला काम है, अनलेस आप सिर्फ क्रिएटिविटी की वजह से पैसा कमा रहे हैं, आप सर्वाइव कर रहे हैं। क्योंकि वो चीज़ें जैसे हमने देखा है यहाँ पे 10 डिज़ाइन बने हैं, सबके चार्ट्स अलग हैं, सबकी सोच अलग है। फर्स्ट टाइमर्स भी आए हैं, मैं काफ़ी खुश हुआ उनको देख के। वो लेडी जो थी जिन्होंने मतलब कहने का कि कोई एक्सपीरियंस भी नहीं था, बट शी वेंट ऑन इट एंड आई मीन उनके लिए तालियां बजनी चाहिए। बिकॉज इट इज समथिंग बड़ा अच्छा लगा देख के। एटलीस्ट इन्होंने हमारे को, जैसे वर्मा जी ने बोला कि हम सबको, राजेश जी ने कि हम सबको डिजाइनर बना दिया है, तो आई थिंक इट्स अ वेरी गुड बिगिनिंग। और ऐसे वर्कशॉप्स होंगे तो आई थिंक बाहर भी जैसे फॉरेन कंट्री से आते हैं। मैं ये देख रहा था कि लास्ट फेयर में जैसे बायर स्पेंड लाइक दे ब्रिंग देयर टीम, वर्टिकल्स आते हैं, टेक्सटाइल वाले, हार्डवुड्स वाले, तो जब भी वो ट्रैवल करते हैं 8-10 लोग, तो वो उनका बजट होगा 20-25 लाख रुपए का बजट होता है इंडिया में आके बाइंग करने का। बट दे डोंट फाइंड इनोवेटिव प्रोडक्ट्स, तो उनको बड़ा अजीब सा लगता है यार इतनी दूर ट्रैवल करके आ रहे हैं, कुछ नई चीज देखने को नहीं मिल रही। तो ईबीसी इसलिए सेशंस करा रहे हैं कि आप जब फेयर पे जाए पुराना सामान ना लेके जाए, नया लेके जाए और नई चीज क्रिएट करें, ताकि जो ओवरसीज बायर्स आते हैं तो उनका भी विजिट वर्क हो और आपको भी लगे यार मैं कुछ क्रिएट कर रहा हूं तो उसका रिजल्ट आ रहा है। तो ये चीजें हम मिस करते हैं। तो आई थिंक ये बहुत अच्छा एक प्लेटफॉर्म था और आप लोग सारे आए इस प्लेटफॉर्म को देखने। और मेरे को लगता है कि आप जब जाएंगे यहाँ से तो आई थिंक कुछ ना कुछ अपनी टीम को, जो आपके डिजाइनर्स हैं, या खुद बैठ के एक प्रोसेस इन्होंने समझा दिया कैसे डिजाइनिंग होती है। तो थैंक यू सो मच फॉर कमिंग। मैं तो सिर्फ इतना ही बोलूँगा कि मेरे को भी बहुत कुछ सीखने को मिला। हम भी अपने आप को बड़े अच्छे डिजाइनर समझते हैं, बट हम एक्सपीरियंस से डिजाइनर हैं, हमने कोई ऐसे कोर्स नहीं किए हुए। बिकॉज हम इतना ट्रैवल करते हैं और कभी भी हमेशा नोट करिएगा जो डिजाइन है वो बाहर ही बताता है। कभी आप ज्वेलरी की शॉप में जाए तो आप कभी देखते हैं तो लेडीज ही आकर बताती है मुझे फलाने वाला जो दीपिका पादुकोण ने उसमें डाला था वो मुझे इयररिंग चाहिए, या वो साड़ी उन्होंने डाली थी। तो बायर गिव यू द इनपुट कि क्या चल रहा है। और जितनी आप बायर से कम्युनिकेट करेंगे, जैसे मैडम ने भी बोला कि हम अपनी स्टोरीज बताएं या उनकी स्टोरीज सुनें, तो आई थिंक वी विल रीच समवेयर। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ा छोटा स्टेप है, बट ये बहुत आगे तक लेके जाएगा। थैंक यू ईपीसीएच फॉर राजेश जी जो ये वर्कशॉप करवाई, और आई थिंक ये सारे क्लस्टर्स हैं जो हमारे इंडिया में सब में होनी चाहिए। थैंक यू सो मच फॉर कमिंग। आई होप इट विल बी अ वेरी सक्सेसफुल वर्कशॉप और आप सारे कुछ ना कुछ सीख के जाएंगे। थैंक यू सो मच।
Thank you, Malik Saab. Thank you very much. May I now request Mr. R.K. Verma, Executive Director EPCA, to address us.
Thanks, Nawaji. पहले तो सबसे फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल थैंक्स टू DBS team, particularly Bhunesh ji and Divya and their team. At least all of you are going कि हमने आज कुछ डिफरेंट सीखा। Normally EPCA organize regular seminars, but today is seminar was totally workshop. It's a totally interactive workshop. I think all of you participated, and definitely that at least जो एक डिजाइन से लगता है कि पता नहीं डिजाइन किसने क्या किया, वो एक इंटरेस्ट क्रिएट करके आप आज को सब कुछ कार्य भेज रहे हैं। आई होप। दूसरा वंदना जी ने जो भी बोला, प्रेसी ने भी बोला, आई थिंक नॉर्मली हम सब सुनते हैं कि मेरे इतने साल काउंसिल में हो गए कि चाइना हमारा कंपटीशन है, पर मुझे कभी ऐसा लगा नहीं है, क्योंकि क्रिएटिविटी यूनिकनेस जो आपके प्रोडक्ट की है वो आप करते हो, लेकिन उसको एक्सपोज या बता नहीं पाते। तो आपका जो क्रिएटिविटी है काइंडली उसका एक बैकग्राउंड स्टोर एटलीस्ट बाहर को तो बताएं, क्योंकि मशीन में प्रोडक्ट तो चाइना से ले रहा है, पर आपके यहाँ पे जो क्रिएटिविटी या हैंडवर्क है वो बाहर को जब तक नहीं पता चलेगा तब तक उसका वो हमेशा जब पर्टिकुलरली जैसे ने कहा हमारे यहाँ एग्जीबिशन में जब आते हैं वो एक एक्सपेक्टेशन से आते हैं कि यहाँ मुझे हैंडमेड प्रोडक्ट्स और डिफरेंट वेलकम मिलेगा, क्योंकि वहाँ पर आपका यूनिक डिजाइन ही नहीं है, डिजाइन आप इसे लेते हैं और बना के वहाँ पे आप तो वे दिन प्रोडक्शन कर सकते हैं। क्रिएटिविटी आप ही की है। मैं आज भी मानता हूँ कि मेरा हमारे चाइना के साथ कोई कॉम्पिटिशन नहीं है। सो प्लीज एक्सपोज योर जो हमारी क्रिएटिविटी है उसके बारे में बताएं बाहर को, एंड डेफिनेटली चलो थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर द एंटायर योर पार्टिसिपेशन एंड द टीम फॉर द DBS। Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Now, before we move outside for the refreshments, we have some mementos to be given. So, may I request Mr. Malik and Mr. Verma to present the memento to Team DBS. May I request Mr. Bhavnesh Suri, Ms. Divya Suri, Ms. Sapam Basnet, Sharad Valia, Sabina ji, Vikram Singh, Bhagava, all to join us.
Thank you. Come guys. Sharad, come.
Joint लो और भी है भाई
Namrata, yours is the last.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.